Today on Tricrow Studios, we talk about 7 strings. 7 strings. 7 strings. 7 strings. 7 strings. What the heck did I do to this one? 7 strings. 7 strings. 7 strings. And should you buy one? The first thing I want to talk about is scale length. So, here we have an X Series soloist Jackson guitar. Here we have a Pro Series Dinky Jackson guitar. Both of these have Floyd Rose. This has a real deal Floyd Rose, whereas this has a Floyd Rose Special. Both of them stay in tune relatively well. You can't really use the whammy bar on this, otherwise you're going to be retuning the whole thing. Setup is a little bit of a pain for both of these. However, once you do get everything set up properly, you're pretty much set, unless you touch the whammy bar. Now, why am I talking about scale length? It's one of the most important things with the extended range guitars. So basically, this is a regular scale length, so like a 25.5, and this is either 26.5 or 27 inch scale length. So basically, from the bridge to the nut, it's longer, thus the neck kind of feels like it's longer because of the placement of it. The strings are a lot tighter on this. Well, just a little tighter than on this one. So this one feels kind of flubby, whereas this one is tight and crisp. Depending on your tastes for how your guitar feels, this may turn you off completely of playing 7-string guitars, whereas this may save you. On the other hand, if you do like looser feeling strings and some flubbiness, there are people who do, then this would probably be your saving grace for an extended range guitar. Next up, let's talk about pricing. So here we have, and I'm Canadian, so I'll talk Canadian pricing. So here we have a $1,400 7-string, and here we have a $260 7-string that has had upgrades. This guitar feels, and for the most part plays, and somewhat sounds better than this guitar. So again, this is partially to do with scale length. This one here is either a 26.5 or a 27-inch scale length. This is a 25.5. Basically, I installed a hip shot bridge. I put DiMarzio Titan 7 pickups in here. I've also done a push-pull for coil tapping, and I installed locking Spurzl tuners. It has a maple neck on it, and basically a poplar body, so a cheap body. And yeah, it sounds and feels great for the most part. When you let it sit for a little while, you would want to change the strings. It's something I've just noticed on these type of hip shot bridges. There's a lot of benefit to that, whereas something like this, I guess you could say the same. You get a little longer out of your strings with this. If that makes any sense, I might sound ridiculous here. So I spent about $1,400 on this guitar, and for this guitar, $280, $200 for the bridge, $240 for the pickups, and $120 on the tuners. So again, we're still looking about, this is about half the price of this, and I prefer this guitar to this one. Next up, let's talk about the other side of the extended range. So we have the 7-string and an 8-string. The big difference here is the thickness of the strings. So you're going one more string with an 8-string. That means you've got a much thicker string. So you really have to pay attention to the scale length. Multi-scales would be very beneficial for 8 strings, whereas they're not as necessary on a 7-string, depending on the overall scale length of it. This can feel like a bass. This can feel like just a guitar with another string on it. Another very important thing about 7 strings is you can pick them up pretty cheap on the used market. Basically, what ends up happening with these guitars is people buy them to try them out, even though this is a cheap one. But people will buy them like brand new to try them out, and then it won't work for them. So they'll end up thinking, oh, well, I'll sell it for basically the exact same what I sold it for. There's no interest in it whatsoever. So then they end up selling it relatively cheap. So on the used market, a 7-string is probably your best way to go. Next up, very important, we got to look at pickups. So one thing that I've found with a lot of 7-strings is a lot of them have EMG pickups, and a lot of them have EMG Soapbar pickups. So if you have a couple of 7-strings, most of them will probably have EMG 707s in them. So that's a little different pricing wise when you want to change out your pickups versus something that have like not the Soapbar, so more of a traditional type of pickup. These pickups here, these are the Nazgul and the Sentient. So basically, per pickup, you're looking at about $100 to $120 per pickup, whereas you're adding another $20 to $40 per pickup just for a Soapbar size. So if you're looking to purchase a 7-string, maybe you're going to get it used or new, and you're just thinking, you know what, if I don't like the pickups, I'll just swap them out. Keep that in mind. Soapbar pickups are about $20 to $40 extra per pickup when you're purchasing them. And the last thing I want to talk about here is shapes. Not necessarily, even though I'm holding a Rhodes 7-string here. You can get King V's and there are rare like Explorers and stuff like that. But I'm more talking about Headless. I don't own any Headless 7-strings or 8-strings. But those are something that are on the market and are quite popular. I'm not quite sure. I haven't even played one because I haven't found one that I could play around here. But those are a large trend that is out there. Just keep in mind when you're doing that, the balance. Like, you really want to try it out before you buy it. Even, like, I know I'm making this during COVID times where that's not always really possible. But make sure you're actually trying them out. Just one of the things that I've always looked at would be the headstock balance and versus the body balance. And another thing would be the tuners. If the tuners are the tuners which would technically be part of the bridge at this point. So the tuners would be down here. So it'd be similar to a Floyd Rose where you'd be able to do like finite tuning and such. But if you don't like those, you may have a harder time finding replacement tuners for it or replacement bridge, because some of them are very specific to the guitar and there may not be manufacturers that actually make different versions of them, if that makes any sense. Alright, thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was a little bit helpful. I know it's not as helpful as, say, like the Flying V video that you've seen, the like should you buy a Flying V, or the Les Paul or the Explorer type guitars. But if you do have any questions, whenever you ask them, we generally try to answer them kind of as quick as possible, so whenever we see them, whenever we're not working. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below. Another thing that's really cool is when people watch these type of videos, they usually go to the comments section, and if you have questions that maybe I couldn't answer, or that they didn't like the answer, or wasn't enough of an answer, you'll generally receive an answer at some point, because people like to do that. It's a great community that we actually are in with the guitar community. One thing I do want to note, for me, it was not a challenge to switch from 6-string to 7-string. I think that's more of the player that I am. Like, I'm not playing jazz chords or full 7-string chords on these things. You could, I guess, say chugga chugga is more my style with the 7-string. What I find a lot of people have problems with when it comes to the 7 and 8 strings, or if you're looking to become a different player than you are, or if you're looking to do like full 7-string chords, like in a jazz style. It gets a little more challenging depending on who you are as a player, and never be scared to say that, you know, you've tried it and it doesn't really work for you, you're not that type of player. I can tell you straight out, I am not an 8-string player, and I'm probably actually going to get rid of that 8-string when I finish this video. I'm not sure. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I like these two guitars.